Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast. This is a special edition. Don't normally broadcast live on a Friday night, but due to important local events, that's what's happening. We're here to expose the political power players, politicians, and social influencers here in Kootenai County. Nobody else doing that. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. There's likely to be a lot of them tonight. So for those of you joining us for the first time, what you're going to do is you're going to get involved there in that comment section with your questions or comments. We are able to see those, and we will wrap them into the program when we can and when it is fitting. You can get involved in that comment section on whichever platform you're watching, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube. A reminder for those on Instagram, you're seeing a very odd vertical layout, and until our live stream platform fixes that, you're going to have a better viewing horizontal experience over on YouTube, Facebook, or X. You're going to be all good to go there. Tonight on Liberty Without Compromise, we're pulling back the curtain on a story that has just rapidly escalated in the last 48 hours. A concerned congregant, now a whistleblower, recorded her conversations with Pastor Van Noy after his behavior surrounding the Dan Wilson for Sheriff campaign became increasingly strange. Denials that didn't make sense, shifting explanations, and a phone call so unsettling that 20 minutes in, she hit record for her own protection. When he later insisted on bringing his counsel to their meeting, she recorded that too. Never intending to make any of this public, but when the manipulation became undeniable, she came to Liberty Without Compromise. And now that Van Noy's operatives have exposed her identity and begun flooding social channels with distortions, she's here tonight to speak for herself as to why she recorded, why she released the audio, and why she trusted us to publish it. That's not all. Tonight's live broadcast will be bookended by a full breakdown of everything that has unfolded since Danielle Van Noy's statement released yesterday, the cascade of reactions that followed, and the brand new statement from Pastor Van Noy himself that was just released today. We're going to take your live comments and questions throughout as we unpack the timeline, the motives, and the impact these revelations are having across the county. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Dan Wilson.
Am I on? There we go. Thanks for joining. So glad you are here with this night on this. It's a Friday night. It is the 21st of November, 2025. And just to be clear, for those of you who may watch this later or hear it on the podcast, we're broadcasting around 7:20 Pacific Standard Time. The reason why I say this is because we are now into the nitty gritty with everything that is flying between online comments, mostly perpetrated by the Candlelight Committee, the posse, Van Noy's posse. Lots of things are being misconstrued. So if you happen to watch this later and something has transpired between when we have broadcast and completed broadcast and something new comes back up and they say we were being truthful, whatever, timestamp it. It is Friday, the 21st of November, 2025. So why are we here? Donna, you did a great job in on the fly, coming up with that great introduction. There has been a lot that has taken place right here in Kootenai County in the past 48 hours, 36 hours to be technically clear. Those of you who have watched this show for any number of episodes or time understand that I had ran for sheriff in 2024. While I ran for sheriff against the incumbent Republican Robert Bob Norris, I was attempting to meet several people in the community. And I had been strongly advised, you got to go and introduce yourself to Pastor Paul. Those of you that want to know how that went can go back to our previous episodes just a few weeks ago when we exposed exactly what Van Noy and former Fed DHS agent Davaloo Cummings had to say. That was the reason that we put that out is because, again, there's been a lot going on with Van Noy and Candlelight and things that are untrue, and we decided to address this once again. We did that to show that despite what Paul has been saying publicly, what the reality is, and that was that I did not actually go to kiss the ring. I never asked him for an endorsement. This is not political retaliation. This is nothing more than to set the record straight. And we did that, and we got some blowback, as you can well imagine. Not surprised. In fact, I'm glad we got blowback because that means people are paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
But what surprises me is that more than wanting to get to the truth, many of you disingenuous individuals who claim the name of Christ, and I challenge you whether you really are believers, rather than address the abhorrent behavior by a man who claims to be the people's pastor, the pastor of Coeur d'Alene, the head of the ministerial association here in Cooney County, instead of listening to him and his abhorrent comments and statements about himself, his arrogance, and as many lies that we have shown, you want to attack those that exposed him.
Yeah, and to just revisit why we're discussing those audio tapes that we had released just a couple of weeks ago, we will be talking about Danielle Van Noy's statements that she released yesterday, Pastor Paul Van Noy's response when he came out with a statement today. That's coming up in the program. Yeah. The reason we're back revisiting these audio tapes that we had released is because of the mocking and the jeering, and as Dan said, the focus going toward how dare somebody record and then eventually release these audio tapes. But we're not talking about what was said in that closed door meeting and the behaviors of Pastor Paul Van Noy and Davaloo Cummings. And like Dan mentioned, we then had political operatives in Paul Van Noy's circle that were outing the source of those audio tapes, where we have up until now protected that person, outed her today. And so that is a timely conversation, and in boldness, she will be addressing that directly.
And so just to reiterate, the reason why we're here tonight is because there's a flurry of inaccuracies, lies, smear campaigns done by Stephanie Fetzer, Aaron Barnard of the Kootenai Spectator. We have no doubt that Davaloo Cummings, again, who is always advising Pastor Paul Van Noy, former federal agent with Homeland Security, they're all behind these smears. We're going to describe how this person was outed, and you may find it interesting to find out how a pastor outed the person that recorded him in the manner that he did. But again, why are we here? This is stuff that we've talked about. We understand people are going to be upset and that this conversation is going to happen in the community. You and I had our broadcast, our weekly broadcast, just 2 nights ago at the same time, Wednesday night, and we were discussing other things. Keep in mind that after we have posted the various videos and said things on social media, Pastor Paul Van Noy has continued to engage those critical of him from his Sunday pulpit, as well as from his Wednesday night special gatherings that are available for all of you online to look at, to view yourself, to see the context of what has been said. And there's a lot of weird things that he's been saying, but he has continued to engage those of us. There are others in the community where you guys claim, some of you, the Fetzer groups, that we are tied together. We are independent. We just happen to share a common goal of the timing is right with the things that Paul Van Noy has been saying to bring sunlight to the evil deeds that are taking place. And they are evil. Make no misunderstanding about this. It is absolutely, unequivocally evil. So we get done with our show the other night. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even really talking about Paul. Completely different subject. We wake up Thursday morning. We go about our daily routines, and then you take it from here.
Yeah, you head into work. I start checking my messages and had found over on the X platform that I was personally sent a message from Danielle Van Noy. And the statement that was made there in that private message was that due to the fact that she had been sent audio of her dad speaking about her that then was released into the public and now circulating social channels, she felt compelled to be able to make a counter statement. And then within that statement, there was more that was said relating to her historical references and experiences. So challenging this more blanket word that what her father was putting out there, presenting, was that, you know, I have a daughter who's fallen away from the faith, was the essence of.
I think it possibly renounced her faith and moved to New York.
Those
and that was in the audio that we released. And you're exactly right. So that was somehow shared with her.
Mm-hmm.
We have never met, I don't even know Van Noy's kids' names or how many kids he actually has.
Yeah.
Just to be clear.
Yeah. And this is going to be something that's hard for people to really just grasp in their mind. And it comes down to really the influence of your conviction of the Holy Spirit in seeking truth. Because Stephanie Fetzer is spreading a flat out lie that Dan or I or the both of us had somehow sought out Danielle. Well, first the narrative was that that's not real. That's not her account. And they were spreading
on X.
On X, that's not Danielle Van Noy's account. Nobody can verify it's her. It's not her account. And so they were just discrediting the message altogether. So their political operatives are out on social media spreading that. Well, then this was moving so fast that they had to go beyond that. And Stephanie's Fetzer's messaging then changed, which then trickles down to all of the operatives who are out on social media to say that Dan or I had reached out to her because we've been on a vendetta for the last year and a half and will do anything to take down Paul Van Noy. Mm-hmm. So we somehow orchestrated this entire thing and coaxed her into then releasing that statement yesterday. But the reality is, didn't know Paul Van Noy's kids' names, don't know the history of their situation, don't run in those circles in terms of knowing what the rumors even are, wouldn't have thought to use that and weaponize a person that we knew nothing of and had never previously met, spoken with, had any sort of exchange whatsoever until I received that message over on the X platform, a message that came directly to me yesterday.
So the message came through. It was a link to an X post. I don't know if you can pull that up. I'm going to read it because it's a little hard to fully see on the screen. Many of you have already seen this.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a link to the article on our website where all of the screenshots of Danielle Van Noy's posts are there. Yeah. And then if you can read the bulk of her statement.
So this was posted again yesterday morning, which would have been the 20th, on her X account under her name, Danielle Van Noy, Danielle_Van Noy. She starts out and says, I am writing this in response to being sent clips of my father, Paul Van Noy, speaking publicly online about my personal life and faith. Allow me to clarify. No, I have not renounced my faith. I have, however, renounced religion, particularly the type of religion promoted by my father that misconstrues faith, truth, and love, perverting these concepts into instruments of control for personal and financial gain. Since my father has chosen to comment publicly on the dynamics of our private relationship in a widely available recording, I believe it is appropriate for me to share my reasons for separation. I chose to separate myself from my father and his leadership after years of pleading with him to take the offenses of sexual abusers inside and outside his church more seriously. My father failed to protect me when I was young, choosing instead to favor the offenders, plural. His decision to make an excuse for their behavior directly contributed to the further abuse of another young member of his church many years later. I learned of this second incident while undergoing active treatment for 2 types of breast cancer. If my father, Pastor Paul Van Noy of Candlelight Fellowship Church, would not protect his own child, nor take adequate measures to protect the child in his congregation, I must question what other serious offenses he might permit or overlook. Instead of confronting the child abuse and sexual misconduct that arose from his failure to act, my father has chosen silence. He has refused to face his role in the ongoing pattern of abuse within certain church environments today. From not reporting known abusers and instead referring to them as, quote, friend, unquote, to questioning and manipulating victims rather than supporting them. He has not demonstrated a commitment to necessary change. Instead, he has worked with and employed other pastors who have also been known to cover up child sexual abuse. My father publicly condemns so-called evil and sexual promiscuity in people outside the bounds of his church and faith while consistently dismissing or covering up such misconduct in his own house. I believe the people who attend or otherwise interact with my father and his church deserve to know this truth. My father has consistently used his platform as a means of control, often in divisive rather than unifying ways. He touts his ability to lead, tell the truth, and use discernment, but he does so without humility, displaying a high level of confidence and arrogance. My personal experience confirms that his public persona does not align with reality. No doubt my faith has been hard fought after a lifetime of witnessing a faith leader, my father, behave in this manner. I share these facts with the utmost love for my father and the greater Coeur d'Alene community, not out of disrespect. I wish with everything that my father would have taken the initiative to show he is holding himself and others accountable for their mistakes and actively changing the culture that enables harm. I forgive my father and my abusers. Like my father, I believe that what is done in darkness should be brought to light. Unlike him, I believe in telling the truth even when it doesn't serve a religious, political agenda or persona. I hope my father understands my reasons for needing to come forward and my willingness to tell the truth, even if I anticipate that he will not. For verification, included below are relevant links along with my father's words of admission to things in a text sent to me on my birthday, July 7th, 2025.
Again, we didn't have time to do a lot of pre-show prep tonight, so the links and the direct link to Danielle Van Noy's post over there on the X platform, that is on our website, and I put the link to that article that includes all of that, the screenshots, or you can go straight to her profile to read it for yourself. And that article is here in the comment section. And also a bunch of you brand new listeners joining us tonight, as you're getting involved in the comment section, a couple of things. Tag your family or friends, tag them in a comment so that they know we're live right now and they can join us. And then for those of you bold enough to do it, share this feed to your page or profile so that it can extend the conversation as we continue.
After this was posted, we immediately saw the trolls come out. And rather than address what Danielle said in her post, along with the many resources and the sources of her statements, her claims, they immediately began attacking the messenger. They attacked Danielle as being not credible.
Is it really her?
Is it really her?
A legitimate question.
Exaggeration of what really took place. Well, you guys know better by now. All of you know better. When it comes to any kind of accusations inside the church, they can be completely unfounded. And we know that that does take place. But you have a minimum duty to conduct an investigation into any allegations. Let me be very, very clear here. Even though those in Paul's circle, the Stephanie Fetzers, the Aaron Barnards, have continually tried to frame an argument that isn't even there, that says that we are attempting to claim that Paul committed any kind of sexual assaults or crimes. Let me be very clear right now. At no time have I, nor will I say, with the information given to me at hand, that I believe Paul has committed any crimes of sexual assault or anything close to that. I don't have any direct knowledge. I have no proof of that. But let's talk about what is really the question that needs to be addressed. The real question needs to be this, very simple. Has Paul at any time in the past or present at any time failed to report to law enforcement any direct knowledge or allegations of sexual assault against any family member or against others under him in his capacity as pastor in his congregation, to include their children or any other ministry that he oversees? And if none of this has happened, Paul should be able to come out very articulately to say, I have never failed one time in my not only lawful duty to be a mandatory reporter of any kind of allegations of sexual assault. That is one thing. My question is, has he done that? And if he cannot answer that basic question straightforward with a no, I have never failed in my duties to mandatory report, then the question is, if he can't say that, then why? And we can put him on the official record to refute what allegedly his daughter is claiming about her own sexual abuse. And every one of you out there that are spinning your wheels, completely distraught, that how dare our pastor be accused of any of these things? He is a man of God. He is a shepherd. That means he takes the arrows and he does so with the grace that God gives him and with the power of the Spirit to face down the accusers. And with the power given to him, being a representative of God, he is able to go and distinctly correct the record with proof. And anything short of that is suspect. So today, we finally get a response out of Paul. A couple hours ago, I want to read what his response is to his daughter's post. You guys listen to what he says, and then you can be the judge with me as to what exactly Paul says. He posts this, I believe, is it on their Facebook? Where is this posted? Do you recall?
Yeah, it's his personal Facebook page. As far as I know on that one.
I'm going to go ahead and read this. Paul Van Noy, being aware of the recent allegations against me and against Candlelight, I have chosen to delay commenting until now. To protect the privacy and well-being of my daughter, my wife, our other children, and the Candlelight family, I will not offer a detailed response to the numerous egregious false accusations and misrepresentations now circulating. Still, silence can be misread even when accusations are unfounded. I feel something must be said. I deeply love my daughter and continue to pray for restoration with her. My private text to her, now public, was not an admission of guilt, but an attempt to minister to her in her hurts and grievances. I have sought to lead my family and this church with grace and sincerity. I will remain committed to leading well. Note that the majority of what is being alleged involves pastors and ministries not under my authority, and thus I cannot offer further comment or explanation as they do not pertain to Candlelight. I've remained diligent in safeguarding both my home and the Candlelight congregation. Moreover, we conduct background checks for all who work with children or serve in leadership. I've remained diligent in safeguarding both my home and the Candlelight congregation. Moreover, we conduct background checks for all who work with children or serve in leadership. Leadership often brings scrutiny. Spins and mischaracterizations are common among those of us who take a strong stand for things of truth and conscience. My home is safe. My life is in order. We will not be bullied. We will not be silent. We will not bow. Let me ask you. Did Paul address the very specific claims of Danielle? Does he answer whether or not he has ever failed to report a sexual assault that occurred not only from what it sounds in her own words to her by her attackers, or to somebody else that Danielle is stating was a victim further down the line because of a failure to report? Did Paul answer that? Look at the deflection. We conduct background checks on everybody. So what? I ran a church security team for a large church in the Spokane Valley about 10 years ago, and I can tell you that, yeah, that is good general practice, but that doesn't mean that exonerates or means that anybody that passes a background check cannot be acting and doing evil things. They just haven't been caught yet. I mean, we see this in law enforcement. We see it in teachers and doctors and people all the time pass background checks, but end up doing evil things.
The other thing to take note of is the original messaging coming out of Paul Van Noy's camp. And we know this because we've proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that the political operatives are directly aligned with Paul Van Noy. The initial messaging that Paul Van Noy would have known instantaneously that message originated from his daughter. There's a reason that he allowed his operatives to come out at first and try to discredit that it was Danielle, that account isn't her, and they were showing very unscientific proof as to how easily somebody could just change a profile name and then pop something like that up there. So this was just a hit piece on Vannoy. They obviously realized in the span of less than 24 hours that wasn't going to bear any weight.
Yeah.
So they had to change then how they were what they were going to forward to the public, which shifted into how dare Dan Wilson and anybody associated with him, and then simultaneously Paul Van Noy releases that statement.
The text message that Danielle posts inside her not Instagram, X post,
formerly Twitter.
Formerly Twitter.
Those of you just realizing that.
She shares a text message that her father, Paul Van Noy, sent to her, she's claiming, on Monday, July 7th of this year. I'm going to read it. Hi, Danielle. I know that you are turning 38 today and that you may not want to hear from me. However, I wanted to wish you a very wonderful and happy birthday. On 7/7/1987 at 7:07, my life was changed forever, and it is a moment I will never forget. I also want to tell you that I am sorry. I am sorry that I was not the father you needed and or wanted. I am sorry that many times throughout your lifetime, you did not feel supported by me. I am sorry that I did not protect you from many hurts and disappointments. Using detail as it seems a generic apology would be insufficient, while trusting it won't be an additional hurt. I'm sorry that I did not protect you from Jacob Saladana, and that by failing to do so allowed for others to be deeply hurt by him. I am sorry that I did not provide you the kind of support you needed when the hazing incident occurred at Lake City High School. I am sorry that I was not more supportive when you were suffering the pain of a justified divorce from Matt Feldman. I'm sorry that I was not directly protective of you with Todd Engel. I'm sorry that I was not more defensive for you when you were attacked by Danny Albert and his family. I am sorry that you suffered the horrible experiences of having cancer and all the associated effects that you bear as a result. I'm sorry for the mishandling of the Word of God and our Christian faith as I grew. I'm sorry that my lifetime-changing theological positions created an unstable Christian environment for you and your siblings. I'm sorry that we have been estranged from you for over these past years and that you need to self-protect was the only way you could have felt safe. I want you to know, in spite of all the shortcomings and weakness, I remain your father and love my precious little girl, now a grown woman. I love your husband and appreciate how he has supported you over these last many years.
And if I can just have you pause right there before we break down that letter that Danielle Van Noy released with her statements as some proof to back up where she was coming from. There are those of you in the comment section that have already, I see some great comments and questions coming in. I want to let you know that I'm putting those in the queue and we're going to get to those because many of them relate directly to the discussion at hand, including Paul Van Noy has never admitted the audio tapes to be real. He's never denied that they weren't. Of course, now his political operatives are coming out and they have outed the source or the whistleblower who had provided us those audio recordings. So you are going to be meeting her tonight, and she's going to speak to this in her own words. That is also coming up. So continue to let the questions and comments flow. I'm managing them, putting them in the queue, and we're going to work that into the conversation.
Look, we see, in my opinion, a lot of deflection and gaslighting in Paul's statement. And I get it. I understand if I was in his position, I would too, but you know that he's being advised by his handlers that are inept and incompetent because they are at entry grade school level ability to run cover for a guy. All of you claim that you're followers of Christ, and yet those that have nothing to hide and everything to gain come into the light. They have a discussion. They lay all their cards on the table. I've been there. I've had to do that. But here's what I'm going to leave you with before we go to this next guest. It's this. We have been getting a flood, a waterfall effect of those that are coming out with their stories. Stories of many bad behaviors, bad actions that have taken place at Candlelight. Now, we can't vet them all. I have a team that is going through and systematically making certain that what is being said is credible. But we have talked to some individuals that when we share this story, I think that many of you are going to be shocked. I think that many of you are going to have a come to Jesus moment, literally, as to who you're supporting and why you're supporting it. And ultimately, we want the truth to prevail. Whatever way God decides to allow that has to happen. I'm not at all claiming I'm a mouthpiece for God. All I'm saying is I have righteous indignation because I have experienced firsthand the minute that I started realizing when I got the audio leaked to me and realized what a con man, what a two-bit preacher Paul Van Noy really is. I started to get that righteous indignation.
I'm going to have you address this one right now before we move on, because it's very timely to what you're saying. Bradford girl. The problem here is you have legitimate claims against Van Noy and are trying to use that to leverage your campaign. I have listened to all your podcasts, and this is just a gossip forum. You would not be the sheriff I'd want. Why don't you clear the air on that one for Bradford?
Well, Bradford, just your luck. I'm not running for office anymore. I lost in 2024. Mm-hmm. I have no at all desire to ever run for office again. So I am now fully unplugged when it comes to monitoring and governing what I say. What you see right now is the real me, and it always was, but I was tempered because obviously when you are running for office, you have to be more reserved, and now the gloves are off. So to any of those individuals out there that want to make a claim that this is political and I'm running for office, I'm not. What I am is I am now on a crusade along with the Liberty Without Compromise mission to out and expose all forms of evil and rot, to include human trafficking that Bob Norris, sheriff of this county, claims does not exist. And yet he's so close to Paul Van Noy, and Paul Van Noy claims that he asks Bob to do things and Bob does them. He's never let him down, and that Paul is his pastor. I answered that question. I think that we want to go ahead and play this interview now.
All right.
So why don't you set us up for that interview, please?
Well, the whistleblower, the person who supplied us with the audio tapes, has been outed today on social media at the hands. Well, you're going to find out at the hands of who. I'm going to let her tell you that exactly. And I think when we had originally shared or originally had access to the audio, we shared it as transcripts and spent months being mocked and jeered from the stage because there was no response from Paul Van Noy on any of it. And his political operatives, just their messaging was, they're fake. It's fake. You mean, oh, haha. This was from Stephanie Fetzer herself. Oh, you mean the transcripts they read from the pretend tapes. So you're looking at people who are political operatives whose stories and message will continually change in order to fit whatever the goal is of the moment. And if they're a step behind, they're unfortunately on the defense, and they're going to have to more rapidly shift their story, their approach, the messaging, and disseminate it out to their team. So we're beyond that. They understand now it's been released. And so what they did was they came on the attack to expose who it was that recorded the audio and eventually released it. And with that, we're going to have that conversation with her and hear from her in her own words right now. Stick with us together. We will continue on the other side of this, so keep those questions and comments coming. We'll continue to talk about Danielle Van Noy's statements that she released yesterday, her father, Pastor Paul Van Noy, who released his statements today. We're going to continue the conversation after we hear this.
We have our special guest, Monica, that is now joining us to discuss the accusations regarding why she was the one that met with Paul and recorded the conversation that we eventually obtained. And today, as this social media controversy has lit up, all the typical Paul Van Noy candlelight defenders have come out and made a lot of accusations that are incredibly wrong, dumb, and inflammatory. This is a sample of some of the things that are being spewed by the Kootenai Spectator Group. I can't quite read that here, but this is Stephanie Fetzer, who states, enter Monica Martinez, who asked for a meeting with Paul to discuss Dan Wilson's candidacy. Unknown to Paul, Monica recorded the conversation and turned it over to Wilson, who dipped it or clipped it and released it. In that recording, Paul shared his prayers that his relationship with his daughter would be restored. So you were outed today. And Monica, thank you for joining us. Who else besides us and Paul and his special guest, Davaloo Cummings, who besides those that I just mentioned knew that you were the one that met with Paul and Davaloo and recorded this?
Well, I mean, just like my parents, my sister and brother-in-law, just my immediate family, but otherwise no one else knew.
So it's safe to say that it had to have come directly from Paul and or Davaloo that decided to disclose this conversation and you being the person who made the recording.
Yep.
So we just want to be very clear on this, that Paul Van Noy and Davaloo were the only two that could have given that information to the typical Kootenai Spectator candlelight group that surrounds Paul and does his dirty work for him. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this recording. We want to set up for those that are watching and or listening to know the truth as to how this came to be. How was it that Monica, you're a young lady, brilliant, tenacious. Give us a little background. Why did you decide to meet with Paul? Give us just kind of a short little overview of how that came to be.
Yeah, so I had been attending Candlelight Church for, I think, a few years at that point with my family. Pastor Paul was someone that I actually had admired. I really looked up to him. I enjoyed his teachings at the time at the church, and I just thought that things just weren't adding up when it came down to the campaigns that were going on with the sheriff's race and what he had seemed to be aligning himself with. It just did not make sense. And so I brought it upon myself to eventually ask for a meeting, a private meeting with him to share who I learned that you were and what you represented, Dan. So I just really wanted to share with Paul what you stood for and kind of show him the differences and stances of you versus Norris.
And when you first contacted him, how soon, let me reframe the question. Was the first conversation you had with him on the phone that you recorded, was that the first time you had brought up wanting to meet and talk about my candidacy, or how much earlier in the year, if at all, did those conversations begin between you and Paul?
That was the first time. It was earlier that day before the phone call conversation that I had emailed him to ask for a meeting. And then I think it was, I don't know if it was hours later, I'd have to look back at the times and everything, that he actually called me. And that's when we had that phone call conversation that same day that I sent the email. And
this is about the end of July, 1st of August of 2024, approximately. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And before that, you had never discussed the subject of me and my candidacy prior to that contact?
Nope.
Okay. So tell us about it. You then contacted Paul. Did you call him? Did you text him? How did that roll out when you said, hey, I want to meet with you and talk with you?
Yep. So basically, after that email, I was just requesting some time where I could come and talk to him about the sheriff's race. I believe my email was pretty vague just because I kind of wanted to keep it open-ended. Because honestly, I wasn't too sure how this email would be perceived by the church, just because I know there was a lot of controversy surrounding the sheriff's race. But then I got that phone call later that day from him. I answered the phone. We had a long conversation, and it was about 20 minutes into that conversation that I actually decided that I better start recording it.
So did you have a specific reason that you decided to start the recording?
Yeah. The content of that conversation and what I was hearing out of Pastor Paul was actually very disturbing to me. And I actually was very upset after having that conversation with him. I was kind of emotional and taken back by the things he was disclosing with me in that conversation. And that's why I felt it was necessary to start recording. My parents can, say they saw that I was actually pretty disturbed by it. So that's why I recorded it.
And just to remind those of you who are watching that in Idaho, it's a one-party consent state. So Monica was fully within the bounds of the law by making this recording. Monica, you just stated earlier, you were on the phone. Paul contacted you. Is that correct? Just to make sure I got that correctly.
Yep.
After he called you.
Yes.
Okay. And so while you're in this conversation, things start causing you some alarm. You decide to record it. You record the conversation. What was the conclusion and the agreement of the conversation before you guys hung up? What did you guys agree to?
Basically, I had still asked if it was okay if we met up in person, just because I felt like nothing was being accomplished in that phone call conversation. I was hearing a lot out of him, but I wasn't able to really speak to much about what I wanted to share. And so I had requested still an in-person meeting if he had the time. And so we had agreed that I would email back. And I think I had to email his staff or send an email to someone at the church to see if I could get a meeting with Pastor Paul.
And eventually you did.
Yes.
And were there any conditions or terms when he said, I want you to come and meet with me, or, we're going to get together? Was there anything that were qualifiers or anything that he said during your phone call relating to the future meeting?
Yeah, this was something that did raise a red flag to me towards the end of our phone call conversation. When I did bring up having a meeting in person, he also brought up the fact that he would like to have some sort of legal counsel present in the room. And so that was a red flag to me. And I actually asked, so does that mean a lawyer? Are you talking about someone who can, I don't know, just listen to our conversation and know if certain things we're talking about are legal? Or I really didn't know what that was. But that was definitely something concerning because I didn't know if I was going to be walking into a setup at that point if I did go through with this in-person meeting.
At any point between that phone conversation and when you finally met with Paul, was there any time where you thought, you know what, I'm going to abandon this. Something doesn't smell right. I want to get out of here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, several times I had thought that it maybe wasn't worth it. Just for my own safety, to be honest, I just wasn't too sure that it was worth me going and having, I don't know, setup happen. But at the same time, my intentions were very pure and I just wanted to talk to my pastor. And so I decided that, you know what, if there's a chance to share things with him and if he's willing to hear me out, I'm going to go anyways and just see what happens.
So let's back up a little again for those that are listening to this, maybe hearing this for the first time. A couple weeks ago, Donna and I on our weekly live podcast, we actually played the audio of your conversation, the phone call conversation with Paul Van Noy, and then the eventual meeting that we're going to be covering here in just a second. But let's go back a little further. At any point, because some of the accusations are that I put you up originally, or my team put you up to go and talk with Paul and to set him up at this meeting. Well, what do you have to say about that?
That is all false.
So
just completely false.
And at no time anybody from our team ever requested you, nor stated that we needed you to go and argue on our behalf.
Nope. I mean, in fact, I think a lot of us were hesitant when I kind of brought that idea forward that maybe I could go share some stuff. But yeah, there was never any point that anyone told me to go meet with him. It was all me.
Great. So now coming back to this meeting that you're getting ready to tell us about, you're on your way there. Did you do any prep before that meeting to make yourself fully kind of insulated when you walked into what you didn't know you were walking into?
Yeah, so I did a few things. I knew that going into that meeting, I needed to stick to the facts because, I mean, bottom line, feelings change, feelings don't matter. It's all about the facts. And so I decided to approach the meeting with a vetting survey where you and Norris gave answers on various things that were asked of you both. And I decided that would be a good way to kind of go through the meeting just to discuss both candidates. And then I did print out other forms of documentation that are made public, including some of Teresa Roth's research and things like that. But then also in preparation for that meeting, because I didn't know who was going to be the quote unquote like legal counsel that could be present in that meeting, I did print out a document that has to do with pastor parishioner privilege rules. So some form of like keeping the conversation confidential in order to protect me.
God, so that's kind of like a attorney-client privilege where unless you're committing a crime and it's a mandatory reporting, that conversation that took place had to stay there and could not be leaked under any circumstance by any of the attendees that Paul brought in with him and Paul himself.
Yep, correct.
So when you brought these documents and you got there to the location, where did you guys meet?
So we went to Candlelight. We were all at Candlelight, and then we all went upstairs to Pastor Paul's office.
And at what point did you find out who this extra person or persons were that Paul had alluded to when he was setting up the meeting for his legal expertise to attend?
Right when I walked in the room.
And who was that person?
It was Davaloo Cummings.
Had you ever met Davaloo before or had any rapport with her?
No.
So first time meeting her.
Yes.
And were you surprised?
Yes and no. I don't know. I think, I don't know. It was just a very interesting interaction.
So did you bring all of your facts immediately to hand to them, or, the pastor parishioner privilege? How did that roll out? Yeah,
so we all kind of sat down, kind of just, quick introduction. I shook Davaloo's hand, introduced myself. And then I did have some printouts for Paul just because I was going off the vetting survey and some of that other research. So I did print out an extra copy so that he could kind of follow along, just to kind of keep me on track with, kind of what we were going to talk about as well. And then it was at that point that I did present the that document about the confidentiality.
How was that received?
Not very well. And that's kind of when another red flag kind of went up. It seemed like Davaloo was taken back, and it was a very interesting feel in the room. And to be honest, I wasn't too sure if I was wanting to stay there and go through with it. And I think I even verbalized, possibly in those transcripts you can see, I verbalized just not quite being sure whether or not I should proceed.
Yeah, because I would believe that it's very intimidating. I want to remind folks out there that Davaloo Cummings was an approximate 15-year veteran agent of Homeland Security off of her LinkedIn profile, specializing in human trafficking. This is somebody that we would assume is a seasoned investigator, law enforcement. Also spent, my understanding is 6 years working for the Attorney General of Washington State, investigating tort claims. So you have this person along with Paul Van Noy when you had just wanted to go meet with Paul to discuss the items that you had regarding the sheriff's race. He says, we can do this, but I want to bring somebody that's an expert in the law. You guys eventually meet at his office. You find out that it's Davaloo. You have no knowledge of who she is prior to that, but she gave you some kind of pause when you brought out your parishioner pastor privilege. Seasoned law enforcement officer should immediately understand what that means. But did she give you any indication as to who she was and what her background was as you guys were being introduced?
Not while we were introducing ourselves to each other, no.
When did you find out that she was a former Fed?
I believe later. I mean, I don't know how much later, but it wasn't in that moment that I had known like all those details.
So you guys then, you stayed courageous despite your inclination to flee something that looks to be possibly dangerous. You decide to stay and conversations unfold. We have those conversations that we have published just a few weeks ago on our Liberty Without Compromise broadcast. We did cut out, to protect you, any soundbite that had your voice in that. We most likely will now release these in their entirety so people can rest assured that we have not spliced and diced to form any kind of a narrative. But you, at this point, obviously were recording. And again, you decided to record. Just to reiterate, why did you decide to record this meeting?
Well, after that phone call conversation with Pastor Paul, when he had mentioned that someone else would be present in the room with him, because I didn't know who was going to be present, I decided to record for my own protection and safety.
Pretty smart, pretty wise, as we have now found out so many months later. You guys started in on your conversation. Give us a little bit of a picture as to how this interview went and the responses of Davaloo and Pastor Paul.
Well, every single bullet point we would start to bring up, or that I would start to bring up from the vetting survey, was automatically deflected by Davaloo herself, or I was questioned on my sources constantly. I was questioned whether or not those sources were credible. Pastor Paul would, I feel like he would just talk about things that I wasn't even asking. Like, to be honest, it was very tiring, as in like I was getting annoyed with the lack of, I guess, staying on topic. Everything that I would talk about was totally deflected.
By Paul, by Davaloo, by both?
I would say both. I would say mostly Davaloo. Paul, unfortunately, I think he just started sharing information that I wasn't even asking for. I think the content really shows like his attitude behind a lot of what it really shows his attitude towards all of this. And that was, I think, the most disappointing thing of all. Yeah, it was just a lot.
What was your overall experience with Davaloo and her many interjections throughout the conversation?
Looking back now, it just kind of seemed like she was on autopilot, Fed mode. They do best at deflecting and interrogating. And that's what she did the whole conversation. It felt like I was constantly being interrogated and she was just on autopilot Fed mode. But to be honest, she really exposed herself in that too. So
the big question is, why would Paul, who's been a senior pastor of one of the largest churches in the region, he claims over 2,000 members, tour guide to Israel, mentors lots of other pastors, ministerial association. Why do you think he needed to bring her this former federal agent that is a continual advisor to him to this very day, why in the world did he need to bring her in order to answer your questions or to be a part of your discussion with your pastor?
Mm-hmm. So I do have some speculations, and of course, these are things that I have not been able to like prove at this point. But looking back at everything, it seems like it was more set up on me because I was coming there with factual information. And I feel like Davaloo was the individual in the room who was, I guess you could call the handler, someone who was able to tell Paul whether or not he could maybe share or speak on certain things. She was, you look at her role in all of this, and she's embedded in a variety of things in the county, as we're finding out. And she kind of seems to be, sort of a handler type of person.
When you completed your meeting, eventually you went your own ways, and you had a text message exchange between Pastor Paul shortly thereafter. We're going to go ahead and bring that up on the screen for those of you, again, who are making the accusation that this was a setup on Paul. I printed it out because my eyes are old, so I can't read the screen.
Yeah, same.
Donna, while I'm waiting for that, do you have?
I have that here, and
okay.
I can read the first part.
Yeah,
of
that would be awesome if you do that, please.
Yeah. So this is Monica to Pastor Paul. She says, "Hi, Pastor Paul. Thank you again for meeting up today. I wanted to be respectful of your time. I feel I didn't get to really share my heart with you and came in with the purest of intentions. I was hopeful to interact with you, but felt the meeting was commanded by Davaloo. I brought public information and research and read off it intentionally as I didn't want to misrepresent any information. Unfortunately, with most points that I tried to bring up, I was interrogated by her. I had really hoped to have a personable meeting with you, my pastor, that I respect greatly. Again, I really appreciate your willingness to meet with us." And then I think on some of these, as their text exchange continues, Monica can probably read that. I think she might have access to it. I don't want to throw you off there, but you can probably read that in your own voice, since this is the back and forth that you were having with him, and then your take on what his response, how you took that when he sent his response.
Yeah. So he replies after that, and this is, to be clear, after the in-person meeting. He says, "I enjoyed the time. Davaloo is a strong help to me. I'm sorry you felt put on the spot. I love and respect you and your mother, or you and your mom, very much. Maybe we can meet again." So, I bottom line, I wanted to let him know that I was really there for him and to try to have a personable conversation with him. And I also wanted to make it a point that I didn't like the fact that she was commanding the entire conversation, because I did not feel like at all I got to share things with Paul.
If you have not heard that yet, for those of you watching, we strongly encourage you to go back and watch these episodes, because you will hear in her own tone, her own words, her own inflections of voice, Davaloo, and how she was doing the good cop, bad cop routine, I call it. You got done, you exchanged that text message. At what point did you decide to disclose the audio recordings, both of your initial contact and then this meeting with Paul? What point did you decide to hand those out to us?
Yeah, that was, I feel like, months later. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it took me a while to share that with you, because again, it wasn't my intention to go in there and have a professional setup of cameras and capture things just to expose Pastor Paul. But bottom line, I knew that what I had captured, it would have been unethical of me to not share it. And so I knew that I did have to share it, but it did take a while.
So you are the one that decided, which you have the right to do, to break your first original requested pastor parishioner privilege. And you did so by releasing those to us. And you did that willingly, We, as you stated, received these recordings much later. We did listen to them. I want to point out we did not release those during the campaign.
We did not.
Just to be clear for all of those that are questioning our integrity, during the campaign, when everything is cutthroat, at no time did we publish this out of respect for the people that go to candlelight. We didn't feel like this was the time or the place to do it, although it would have been politically expedient for us to have been able to use that, but we did not. In fact, we did not release those until January, so about 2 months after the election was over. This is now almost 5-6 months after the meeting with Monica and Pastor Paul Van Noy and former federal agent Davaloo Cummings. When we did that, you went through the trouble to write up all the transcripts. We didn't even release the audio at the time. We didn't even officially name Paul. We just called it the Power Player Posters. It was a podcast, and you and I took turns reading.
Yeah. And we knew in doing that it'd be far less impactful, but we were obviously doing it. Well, we were protecting everybody in the room, primarily out of protection to Monica. But at that point, we weren't even interested in pinpointing specific pastor. We knew, hey, anybody invested enough and who's local is going to understand who these people are. But that was a painstaking process to do that. You know, like Monica mentioned, she didn't go in there with high-end, high-tech equipment, and it was something that was an added safety measure because of red flags she had in a previous phone call with him and who she knew might be present in the room and not knowing what their motives were going to be. So it's not great audio due to that. It's an amazing piece that we now have access to. So
because of, I want you out there, they're watching, many of you to be shamed that it takes a young, brave, courageous woman who has convictions when she knows that something isn't right, rather than to run and to go to a place of safety, chooses instead to engage in order to be obedient to God and to hold people accountable. And we appreciate, Monica, the fact that you allowed us, and we're going to talk about this later after you're off, as to how it was that we decided to finally make the request from you, which you graciously allowed us to use the audio a couple weeks ago. And you were protected. We had not disclosed who you were until Paul Van Noy's team today, through social media, I believe it was the Cooney Spectator Telegram page, decide to out you as the person in the recording. What kind of final thoughts do you have for us?
I mean, that doesn't intimidate me that they decided to say that it was me who recorded, because I'm the kind of person that I will own it. I did record it, and I've explained my intentions why. I've been a person who's always stood for truth. You know, I align myself with truth and with God. I don't align myself with a variety of people just because I want to be a part of, a bigger thing or bigger agenda. So yeah, I mean, I don't really care what they say. The truth is the truth, and it's out there. So the main thing is they expose themselves. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. So
when the transcripts, the transcripts that we read that were not naming names back at the beginning of the year, when those were released, I believe you received a text message from Pastor Paul. You hadn't heard from him, I don't think, between the date of the meeting and then when the transcripts were released. But then you got a message from him. I would say, before we let you go, I'd like to get your thoughts on that series of messages.
Yeah. Okay. So I have it here on my phone. Basically what Pastor Paul had ended up doing after the transcripts were released is he did text me. He copied and pasted the previous message that I sent to him right after that in-person meeting. And then he follows it up with saying, "Have I been unkind to you? Did I fail to make you feel loved when I told you that I was voting for Bob and that meeting with me would not go or would not be a good investment of your time? Am I to understand that your intentions were impure from the outset as a result of you recording me and then using our conversation in this way? Recording the meeting and then providing it to others was exactly what I was talking about last Sunday. Sad. I want to trust, believe, hope, but I am naive. I'm not out to get you or anyone else. All I asked was I be left to my own vote and allow others the same blessing. I love you, Monica. Sad. So that's what he said. It's disappointing just because you would hope that someone like that would believe your pure intentions. But I can understand when you're exposed like that, and when that type of behavior is exposed, you feel in some ways betrayed and you sort of create a victimhood for yourself, which unfortunately I feel like is still the case. And I haven't had any further communication with him since.
And to note, several times during the recording of your meeting, he says, I know you're going to go and take this back to Dan and his team. That's probably paraphrasing it, but so then he acts like he's totally shocked that somehow this information went out. But anyway, Monica, I cannot express to you how much I admire you. You're a hero to me. You are brave. Your family are brave people as well. Very good people. We are so fortunate to have them in our community. Thank you so much for your commitment to truth and for staying steadfast. Stay strong and courageous, and may God bless you and your family.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Would not be ethical to not share those recordings with me. Paraphrasing what Monica just said. I believe she's right. For those of you who are maybe just joining us or new to this whole discussion, we went live tonight because Pastor Van Noy, who we have been exposing for, the past year, predating even Dave Riley, his daughter, who is estranged from him, took to X on her account 36 some hours ago and cleared the record in a post that she made public and sent out. It was sent to us. We have never met her or knew who she was prior. But somebody had shared with her the transcripts that Monica was just sharing of the conversation that she had had with Van Noy in her attempt to go to her pastor to meet with him to discuss, why is it that you're so opposed to Dan Wilson? Not sent by us, not sent by our team, but during the transcript, during the conversation, Paul mentions his daughter Danielle, not by name, but says that he has a daughter who I believe has renounced her faith and moved to New York. It might be slightly off, but that's the gist. Danielle then responds, we are made aware of this post. And by the way, again, geniuses over at the Kootenai Spectator and Stephanie Fetzer, the Fedster. Oh, Dan and Donna were in on this because when you go to Danielle's page, her ex profile, all of her 15 followers are all Dan Wilson and his followers and Dave Riley.
Right.
Or maybe geniuses when somebody sends something to us and it's our very first time exposed to that person and we want to maintain any updates and updated posts. You, like a normal person, you social media warriors, follow people so that you can stay in the loop. This all goes back. Very quickly, brief overview. I ran for sheriff in 2024. I announced in 23. By the end of January 2024, I sent out an email to Pastor Paul or to the church. I wasn't certain what email address, but I stated, hey, who I was, that I was running for sheriff, and that I would love to meet with him. Here's some information on my campaign. Please let me know how I can get together with you. That was it. Heard nothing from him, no response. People that went to his church would continually come up to me at many town halls and say, why haven't you met with our pastor? I told them I had emailed him, no response. They came back and said, no emails were sent. As the weeks go by, I sent my email as proof to the people that were questioning it. They came back and said, well, Paul says you were very nonspecific with what you wanted. The summer goes on. This is a common theme. People in this community recognize Paul to be somebody that is supposedly conservative and supports conservative candidates. And why weren't we meeting? Why weren't we having a town hall at his church? I already knew. I knew very early on when I got snubbed because Paul knew. In fact, he goes on later on to admit that he knew and was offended by my email and threw it away. The QR code that we had up on the screen takes you to the resources for that background and shows you the emails. I knew. A man that has a code understands when he's being snubbed by somebody. And by the way, no matter what Paul says, anybody in my circle and those out in the community that had discussions with me understand that I don't go out and ask people for their endorsements. I didn't ask ever one time for Paul's support, let alone his endorsement, but here we are. And then as the summer went on, Monica went and spoke with her pastor, but it couldn't just be her and her pastor. It had to be her pastor and this former, if she really is a former and not still a contractor with Homeland Security, Obama-era Homeland Security is my belief. The conversations that took place, you can listen to them. They're heinous. They're full of lies and gossip and innuendo and deflecting, changing of the narratives. That was shared with me, and I knew that by the end of the summer. In about 245 days, give or take, I finally received a response from Paul Van Noy. We published that email on our website where the QR code is, and Paul tells me exactly why he was offended and threw my email away. So understand that the reason after the campaign, when the likes of Tim Remington from the Altar Church and John Padula, who my understanding is getting ready to run again for county commissioner, were involved in lies and refused when we went to them to say, please correct these lies. They doubled down and continued the lies. And having experienced what I did with Paul, again, all men who claim to be shepherds of God's flock, and yet they're liars, provable liars. The week after the campaign, Paul Van Noy on his weekly sermon claims that he insinuates, everybody knew who he was insinuated that I had threatened him. Because this is what Paul does. Paul says things from his pulpit like he did just a few weeks ago when he said that there was a sheriff or there was a candidate that he didn't endorse and had spent months and countless hours attacking him. What did he say they were? They were executives of Satan. There was some phrase that he used.
Oh, satanically inspired hatred?
There you go. He comes out, and again, he is shaping a narrative by lying. Paul, never one time asked you for your endorsement. So why did we come back out after we'd already done these transcripts back in January of this year? Here we are in October, November of 2025. We brought it out because of the most contentious mayoral race that took place. The KCRCC in direct opposition to Candlelight and Stephanie Fetzer and Aaron Barnard and the switcheroo they did at the Pavilion Park. And I'm watching all this and I'm going, you know what? I know this playbook because I have seen these bad actors, Aaron Barnard, Lucky Barnard, that run the tattoo parlor. I've heard informants, don't know if that's true, but informants to law enforcement, very close to Norris, by the way. Lots of deputies and cops go to their tattoo parlor. And you have Stephanie Fetzer. We did an expose. Donna did a 20-minute expose on her that you can find online. Again, these people come out to play their political maneuvering bullshit. And we said, not so fast. It is time to go back. When Paul is claiming the stuff that he's saying, that he doesn't want to be divisive. I love Dan.
I prayed for them today.
Look, good on him. I again, personally, you've heard me say this. I don't have any malice towards Dan Gookin. Don't agree with him on everything, but he is a mayor. Congratulations. But we're not going to sit by and not expose Paul Van Noy, what he says, the vile things that he says, his arrogant nature, behind closed doors. That is why we are here during our transcript, during the audio transcripts that we leaked. It was shared with his daughter. His daughter responded. That is why we are here. So to put all of the rumors.
The audio transcripts that we released, we did not share with his daughter. She had received the clip and then understood now that he had made a statement that was circulating on social media. So what is true is that because of this audio that we had released, which exposed Pastor Paul Van Noy in his own words, that created a domino effect, because when Van Noy's daughter Danielle heard those statements, that was the thing after I'm certain years that then triggered her to say, I am finally going to speak up. I am releasing this statement publicly. And then that's what brought us to today.
Now, and moreover, we get to use Van Noy's moreover. The reason that we came on live tonight is to correct all of the lies and the propaganda that is coming from all of the Fetzer group, the Barnards, and all their cronies. Be very, very clear. If Paul is on the up and up and has acted righteously and has fulfilled his duties to protect his flock against all threats, then my hat's off to him. That's an honorable thing. If we find out that what is stated by his daughter is true and that there was a cover-up of a sexual assault not only on his daughter, but somebody else due to his dereliction of duty, his attempting to, well, let's just reform somebody, because that's a common thing. Go to julieroys.com and scroll over the hundreds of articles of pastors and churches that are involved in cover-ups of sexual abuse because they think that they are greater than the law of the United States, that those victims don't deserve justice because, after all, the dude that committed the heinous crimes is reformed. He's repented. Well, I got word for Paul. If we find out through credible witnesses that you've been covering things up, I will expose you, and I'm not afraid of any of you. And I ask you, if you are watching this and you know firsthand accounts of things that you can actually share, that we can turn over to investigators, we want to know those. And there is no statute of limitations if crimes occurred before the age of 13 in the state of Idaho, as I understand it. Every one of you should be ashamed that is sitting there and attacking those of us that are having this discussion. But men love the darkness rather than the light. Men that are in the right, they're in God's will by being obedient, being righteous, have nothing to fear. They are as bold as lions, and those with integrity walk securely, but those who make their paths crooked will be found out. Let's go over a couple of your questions and comments, and we'll
yeah, why don't you, I did put some of those in the queue while you look through, and as we will address some questions and comments now, if you've thought of anything as the program has rolled out, you can continue to put those in that comment section on whichever platform you're joining us on tonight. I do want to add that we understand, Dan may have said this earlier, we do understand that every accusation is not credible. Mm-hmm. We do understand that that needs to be vetted. We are inviting you that if you are a victim or you have information, you can contact us. And like Dan said, those will be vetted. Email address info@libertywithoutcompromise.com. Again, that's info@libertywithoutcompromise.com. Those will be vetted before anything there is specifically brought to light, and we will be very careful and sure to do that.
Yeah, we're not going to be defamatory towards Paul at all. That is not the reason why we're here. We are here to be relayers of light and truth. Let's look real quick here. This question came in, or a comment from Kimberly DeMille. I've heard comments from the original video that it was AI generated, but that doesn't make sense. LOL, glad you are on here to clear things up. Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. Not AI. Let's play this one. Corinne Filiu. This tale is as old as time. They are running on the same playbook as other ministries when faced with scandal. Daystar, Robert Morris, Mike Bickle, Ravi Zacharias, always flying monkeys running the same tactics. No care for the victim. I totally agree. No care for the victims and the continual propping up and covering for these heinous, evil predators. And by the way, if you help cover it up, you are equally as guilty as the original offender. Troy Thompson.
Do you have that toggled over to some of the ones that I had already queued for you?
Yeah, that's the one I'm on right now.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, excellent.
Troy Thompson, am I right that the allegations are not that he did any abuse? That is correct. There is nothing in the statements from Danielle that say that he committed any kind of sex crimes. In fact, I think what it's alluded to is that she's saying that she wasn't protected from those that assaulted her, and that it alludes to, the way I'm reading it, that it was not reported. And that because it wasn't reported or dealt with, that later on, this individual that may have been involved in her original assault went on to assault somebody else in a church, unspecified. I'm learning how to use this here, so...
Continue entering your questions and comments. I had set some aside for Dan that we're going to address. I'm giving him a chance to read through them before he decides where to go with it.
Daniel Harder, you want to know more, contact me. I am Brenda's brother, Paul's brother-in-law. I've been in this battle since 1970s. I know much. Okay. We're definitely going to have that conversation. Let's see.
I could probably.
Yeah, you're better off. I'm too slow. I'm technically challenged.
Before Angie Lamassa joining us on Facebook tonight. Thank you so much. Before the election, I was at a get together. There were friends of Paul there, totally bad mouthing you and Dawna about your personal life. I just listened, and the next day I researched and read, plus asked many, many questions. That's when I decided to vote for you. They were nasty lies.
Thank you, Angie, and I really appreciate that. That is what Paul and Stephanie Fetzer have been doing from the beginning. You know, as you look back in time, you realize that those that you thought would be your biggest supporters, maybe they say, look, we're voting for Bob because he's our friend, but we still support you because our missions are aligned. They didn't do that.
You know, and you got to be reminded, you have a political operative like Stephanie Fetzer, whose name comes up often. I did a 25 minute investigative report on her that was released a couple of weeks ago. That's available on our YouTube channel, our website. Her messaging, she's switched her messaging now because she has personally interacted. I had been blocked for a while. She'll block you and then say you blocked her. It's grade school stuff. But she's recently then interacted with me in comment sections, and she said, you know, Dawna, you just can't, you guys can't get over the fact that I had a different favored candidate and just didn't vote for your husband. What we're exposing now, though, and in a comment dropped here tonight, some of this, the light's only being shed on it tonight because we didn't necessarily have people reporting this back to us then, and people are scared.
Yeah.
They're scared of those in authority, but that Stephanie Fetzer was directly involved in a smear campaign, and then still today will laugh and mock and jeer saying, you know, Wilson ran a smear campaign when it is what she is actively doing.
Yeah. And this all was coordinated.
If you have a favorite candidate, good, go vote, prop them up. But this is now exposing the totality of what was going on, the undercurrent through the entirety of our campaign.
Yeah. Let's bring up another comment here.
No, I thought you had something while I was.
Well, I guess to follow. Yeah, I mean, guess to follow up because you did such a good job. Yeah, I mean that really is how nasty these people have been. We never brought any of Bob Norris's family into the campaign. However, they brought my ex-wife into one of their events. She was campaigning alongside of Bob and Stephanie Fetzer. Stephanie, we have many screenshots of her and the heinous, vile things as a Christian woman that she was saying about me. There are allegations, and she has no problem dropping them and being the gossip that she is, but she can never bring the receipts because that's the way she is. These are vile, evil individuals that are masquerading around, and they're running around with the likes of Senator Ben Taze.
Oh, many of our
many of the elected officials. Dan
Gookin.
Dan Gookin. I don't understand how Dan Gookin goes from they were mocking him just a few months prior to then turning around to supporting him, saying if he was wearing one of our shirts, that would be a definite reason never to vote for him. And then all of a sudden they're back around. Again, I haven't had a conversation with Dan. I know that he has a reason for it.
Well, it's they want to build bridges. Yeah. Because that interaction on again, a comment section, I mean, that is a comment that Dan Gookin has made, is he is interested in building bridges. The issue becomes when you lack the discernment to understand who these people are. And if Stephanie Fetzer presents herself as, she's a really nice lady, and that's even according to Dan Gookin, yes, she can be those things. And that's why it's so deceptive. A comment from a viewer on YouTube. In his statement today, Paul Van Noy admitted that the text Danielle released is his. Once you factor that in, the rest becomes extremely damning. But he belongs in prison, was the comment there. But yeah, and that's an interesting comment, because prior to that, everybody in Van Noy's camp was denying that X account where Danielle released her statement was even real, and it couldn't possibly be hers. So the fact he really had to change, he had to pivot when he responded, which then drew to light that he was admitting that they were in fact his daughter's statements.
And just to reiterate, Paul Van Noy does nothing in a vacuum. His people are around him. Understand that the people that are directly around him have also been photographed many times together as they were advise Sheriff Robert Norris. People all around town do observe. They're just afraid to say anything. This is a real mess, folks, that you have going on here. And the KCRCC, you folks better wake the hell up. You better start coming clean and running a good show rather than the underhanded tactics that you've been doing for the past 4 years while the county voter rate, turnout rate keeps going down. What are you doing to expose this? You guys are so doggone pissed off that Paul broke from you guys and promoted somebody that wasn't yours. What are you doing to expose what is wrong?
You have Linda Cook. There were a couple of comments by her. One, I'm going to have to go by memory because it's too tough to scroll back and find it. But Linda Cook says, I'm actually astonished that they would attack Monica. Oh, goodbye, innocence. Prior to that, though, Linda had left a comment. She can remind me that she was once told if she continued to challenge Pastor Paul Van Noy, because she was a congregant, a church member of Candlelight Christian Fellowship, when she began to question her pastor, people told her, you better quit because he will destroy you. That's a comment that's further up in the comment section. Linda, if I was a little off on that, you can fix that for me. But if Linda herself was hearing that back, then to say, I can't believe, well, yeah, I mean, I can believe that they'd go after Monica, because this is exactly the tactics of what these people are doing. And it's why people had been afraid to speak as things like this were unfolding. People who knew truth weren't coming forward when they were running a dirty campaign against Dan Wilson.
Well, we heard numerous times how afraid people were because, there are business owners that will tell you the blowback that they received in the harassment, including one current player that is still harassing a local business owner. Sarah Martin, it needs to be recognized the courage Monica has. I can't even top that. Monica is incredibly brave. In fact, she is more than a match for Paul and the former Fed Davaloo Cummings, who attempted to not allow her to speak, to be able to express what it is that she wanted to talk about. You will hear this when you go back and listen to them in their own words. Despicable that you have a former professional law enforcement investigator who is employing her investigative tactics on a young lady that's actually doing something good and positive for the community. And it takes two of those cowards to be able to have a discussion with her. What a bunch of freaking cowards.
If you're just joining in on the conversation, I put a QR code up on the screen, links to an article on our website that has those audio tapes so you can hear it for yourself. In the days ahead here, we will probably be revising that article or audio file. It's going to take a little bit of time, but we had taken out the voice of Monica, who was the bold young lady in that room that day. That's now been exposed. Monica's stepped forward. So we are going to be in a position to allow you to hear those tapes in their entirety, because then we've also been accused of chopping things up and editing when really the motive was to protect Monica. But we are beyond that now.
Stephanie and Aaron, who claimed to be worried about Krista Hazel being doxxed, have now exposed Monica. And this is their response in the middle of all the accusations and controversy surrounding Paul. Yeah, I mean, look, she and I today compared notes. The amount of hypocrisy of the public posts and the things that were claimed and stated and accusations that were made by this group during the campaign and afterwards, and they have no problem, no principle, no code. They will violate it in a heartbeat if it means that they will get the political upper hand. And the question is, we haven't asked this again, why do they want control so badly? You guys should ask that question. Let's look at what Lyle says. I walked out of Candlelight myself when I saw loyalty to a man start trumping loyalty to Jesus. My prayer isn't that Candlelight gets torn down. It's that every soul still sitting in the pew finally sees clear who they're truly following, Christ alone or a pastor who can't be questioned. Lyle, I could not have said that any better.
Good word. I did find this comment earlier from Linda. She said, I was warned by a former extended Van Noy family member that if I continued criticizing Paul, that he would destroy me.
Yeah.
Weighted words.
Angela Lamassa, before the election, I was at a get-together. We already played that one. Okay, I'm going to let you control it, because every time I mess around.
Unless we've got some brand new ones come in, we'll probably kind of wind down here in a bit. But I do want to let you know, even if you're watching that replay, you can continue to comment, question. We always come back to those, and we will respond to those. You can reshare this stream. It immediately posts to all platforms. Remember to follow our YouTube channel. It's at the Idaho Sheriff. Even though Dan has made it clear when he had an accuser here earlier in the program saying you're just doing this to further your campaign for clicks, for notoriety. And Dan's made it clear.
Surprise.
There's no campaign. There's no campaign. He's not campaigning. He's not running. It is purely, we saw what came after us during a campaign. A man who had the heart and motive to run because he believed he could do a better job. And in that process, evil showed its face, exposed itself. And then that was something that, while we were extremely tired after that year and we thought, we could just take what we know and, I don't know, go to Cancun or wherever it is people go, move on.
Yeah.
But when you're faced with that kind of evil and God calls you to task to do something, we now can't unknow what we know. And that is why since then, with the Liberty Without Compromise Network, we have been on that mission to continue to expose evil and corruption in Kootenai County, because as much as we knew by the end of that campaign, because they came to attack us, that otherwise we didn't know they existed. They couldn't help themselves. And we now have a responsibility toward that, which is why we are still here. I liked this Bob Thompson comment, because it was back earlier in the conversation when we were talking about Davaloo Cummings, who seemed to be a handler for Pastor Paul Van Noy and was present in that interview with Monica that she talks about earlier in the program. You can needle drop back to that if you missed it. But Bob comments that Davaloo's the Fed handler for Norris to boot.
Probably.
Yeah.
And it's been said that Candlelight really is a clearinghouse for the feds to be watching for all the radicals at in the altar church.
Dan, I want you to respond to this from Melita Clary. She's joining us on Facebook.
Yeah. Does Monica feel like she may be targeted or in fear? I hope not. I believe, after talking with Monica, she's very optimistic. I think that she is brave, and I don't think she is worried. But this brings up a great point. We have seen the most heinous of actions this past year, political violence, and many unanswered questions. But if you guys are like me, and I just heard tonight before we went on that Marjorie Taylor Greene abruptly resigned from Congress.
Okay.
I don't know what that's about. We were just going live when I saw that. You guys all know that something is not right, very wrong going on right now in our country. And many of you who thought that Trump is going to be your savior and that by getting a House full of Republicans and a Senate full of Republicans, that we're going to be able to start righting the wrongs, and you see continual betrayal after betrayal after betrayal. I know some of my friends get really mad when I say that. I'm playing out what my feeling is and my belief, and I think many of you agree. Spiritually, something is majorly wrong when you look around your community and you see the amount of evil behavior. We need real men of God right now to shepherd the people, to give them the courage and the truth, and to enable and equip them to come out and do battle. And with all these mega churches around here, with everything that you see going on, how is it that this county can be so fractured? And how can our country be so fractured? Because evil has taken over the gatherings of Christ throughout this entire country and the world. And I want you to pray with me. I'm not a person. I'm not going to publicly pray. I don't like the what do you call it? It's performative. Performative.
The performative is the problem. Yes.
But I do want you to pray with me that in our very own county, that all evil will be exposed. Everyone. And pray with me, too, that the areas in our lives that we are blind to, that we need to clean out, that we will also surrender that, and that we will together collectively, as followers of Jesus Christ, we will continue to do the right thing and clean up our own lives. You cannot clean up the country. You cannot clean up the state until you clean up your very own living room. And this is all we're doing. We haven't said that Paul has committed a crime. We think that he's a scuzz bucket that has done some very heinous things for somebody that calls himself a pastor, but he can repent of that. Many others can repent of what they're doing. And there is time to go back and make rights, but we have not accused Paul of making any criminal actions, but we are going to expose if any cover-ups have occurred under his watch. I will make certain till the very end that he is held accountable for every last thing that he has done, if he has done so at the expense of his flock.
On that note, a question from Scott Palmer over on Facebook. Why are you guys going so hard against Paul and Candlelight? What's the end game here? I'm hearing a lot of details that confirm things I've experienced, but not sure this serves any purpose for anyone.
Scott, you're way behind. You probably should, instead of talk, you should actually go and do a little reading. I don't have time for stupidity.
I guess.
I don't know what else. I hate comments like that. People that pop in at 11th hour. What's going on, man? You do your own research, for crying out loud.
Well, what's the end game?
Go back and look at it.
Okay, but what
I just said what the end goal is, which is to expose all evil. This is what we have said from day one, and to continue to promote liberty for all, even those that don't believe in God, that don't believe in our form of Christianity. In America, it is separate from our faith. Our faith, our church, is not the government.
You do all realize that if Paul Van Noy, a comment from a viewer on YouTube, if Paul Van Noy failed to report his own daughter's sexual assault and actively shielded the perpetrator, there could be children being abused right now. Which is, I mean, that's one of those. It's part of a larger discussion for sure. So those are the things people need to be smart enough to read her statements and have those kind of thoughts leading you towards certain conclusions. But then also understand, while that hasn't been proven, those are good if statements. Things to be asking yourself that include the word if it is proven.
Brad Schultz, Dan, we support you. How would Governor Wilson sound? If you know somebody by the last name Wilson that is governor material, not me, and fits the bill for a man of integrity,
you're like, hello.
Let me know. I'll be the first to write a check.
Do you have any words to wrap this up before we remind people of anything else they need to know?
I want to put this up here. If Dan had won the sheriff, this podcast wouldn't be reporting on these important things. Oh. Maybe everything works out as it should. I mean, yeah, that's possible. We've thought about that. I also absolutely would have acted with the knowledge that I have right now. There would have been investigations into a lot of people. You can go back. I have a record on all of my social media where I stated The reason that we do not go after child predators, human trafficking in our own community, is because we are worried who we might catch in the trap.
Well, and it's interesting that that was something that became such a central part of your campaign as you realized you had people coming to you with firsthand stories and organizations working toward eradicating human trafficking in our county, and then a sitting sheriff denying that it is occurring here.
At scale.
At scale.
Yeah.
And so it did become a central part of your campaign, and they came after you so hard. And what that tells me is you got something going on where you cannot have a guy who was clearly going to go after that. You cannot have a guy like him being on that sort of mission into an elected office that would be in a position to expose that kind of evil. They couldn't allow it.
I've been following this for a while. Nice try. What's the end game? A personal crusade to cleanse our county? Yeah, it's going to be a personal crusade because guys like you have no courage and are promoting and supporting what's going on rather than doing the right thing. Weak men like you force men like me to go on these private crusades. Although it's not totally private. I got my friends like Jim Harbin that prays for me all the time. I have many advisors, those that join up with me. Monica was one of those people. I'm surrounded by a lot of brave people, but to the bigger point, Scott, you're an idiot.
Well, and something that Dan says all the time at the end of every program, he'll say it again tonight, is to be strong and courageous. And that's a reminder to you when they are when any of these operatives or people in positions of authority or that run in your church circles, they're trying to diminish you and make you to believe that you are in the minority. When Stephanie Fetzer knows how to bring people together because she's very involved in the civic space, she can recruit people rapidly. She can disseminate information. And that's one of the things we talked about when we investigated her at a mention from the pulpit or an announcement in another location. She's able to rally people. And what it does is it crushes your spirit. It makes you believe that you are truly in the minority, and these people who are already in powerful positions can never be unseated. But you realize you're headed toward an America and toward a county where a person cannot ever again just wake up one day and say, I'm going to run for office because I feel I'm best suited and have the skill set necessary to represent the people right here. That is what we are up against. It's this make-believe smoke and mirrors situation where your vote counts and you're putting who into office who you want. But if you have a strong guy like this that they tried to pummel and they attempted to humiliate, you lost by a landslide, go home, you're ridiculous, unqualified, running a smear campaign, you don't talk about what you can do, you don't have the skills for this, all of those things. The objective was to smash him so hard that he would just go away. Did you go away?
Nope.
And you have said in the past, unfortunately for them, that's what created Dan Wilson.
That's what created. So Bjorn, you are sort of right on that. Although, again, I've conducted many investigations and got to the bottom of every bit of evil that I possibly could. I need all of you who truly want to see righteousness and good come out of this community to join in prayer in your own private prayer closets, to ask the Lord to expose all evilness, all unrighteousness, and to restore. Don't buy the bullshit that Charlie Kirk started a revival. There is no revival without mass repentance. It starts out personally, then it goes corporately into our communities before there can be revival. All of us have much to repent for. I'm encouraged, though. I see so much light coming out right now. Evil cannot prevail forever. I'm the grandson of a man who was in World War II, part of the greatest generation. He rose to the occasion when he needed it. In fact, most of you did not descend from fearful men. You descended from men who understood the times. They saw the evil, they saw the need, they saw the call to action, and they acted accordingly, and they dedicated their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. What will you do right now with the information you have in order to be worthy of standing in the shadow of those men? Thank you guys for watching tonight. More to come. Donna, take us out.
Thank you for joining us tonight on this special edition of the Liberty Without Compromise broadcast, focusing on the events over the last couple of days involving Danielle Van Noy, Pastor Paul Van Noy, political operative Stephanie Fetzer, exposing our informant, Monica. Just now joining us, and you're like, what's going on here? You just watched the replay. The QR code for our website, libertywithoutcompromise.com, is up there in the screen. That's how you can follow. You can go back to previous episodes. All of our live streams are archived there on the YouTube channel. That's at the Idaho Sheriff. And if you're listening back on Facebook or any of the social media platforms, be sure, again, send this program to private message if you don't want to be seen. You don't want to take that risk, and I fully understand doing it publicly. Send it through private message to your friends and family who need to be a part of this and who need to hear this. This needs to be exposed. libertywithoutcompromise.com. And for those of you who enjoy podcasts, you can listen and subscribe to those wherever you get your shows.
It's time for a Knob Creek Old Fashioned. I'm going to smoke us a couple cocktails.
Way past time. Definitely not how I intended on spending my Friday night. It would have been good to have a little bit of a break, but after all, this is why we are here and why we've been doing what we've been doing.
Cut a cigar.
For over a year. Let's go.
I should have gone to Stella's Stogies today to get my Olmec cigars.
Stella's Stogies in Spirit Lake.
Good night, everyone.
On Main Street.
God bless.